Well, the newly elected and re-elected returned to Canberra over the weekend to prepare for the first session of the 47th Federal Parliament. Much of the focus in the first week will be on enshrining Labor's overly ambitious emissions reduction plan into law, which, as I've said previously here, will bite the economy hard in 2030. And there'll be reforms to aged care, which, as we all know, is long overdue. Where the Prime Minister will get his 24/7 nurses from, no one knows, not even him. However, we'll also hear plenty of ongoing debate too about this Indigenous voice to Parliament. Now, this can be simply described as an attempt to establish a new and unprecedented Indigenous consultative committee legally connected to the Parliament so that government can refer to it in formulating, introducing and maybe even amending policy and legislation. Another layer of decision-making, basically. It's a concept that culminated in the Uluru Statement from the Heart. Now, I've done my best to weigh up various conflicting views on this. I've been listening intently to interviews given by Indigenous leaders, men and women, parliamentarians and non-parliamentarians, both here and elsewhere. Those on the Conservative side and those on the left, who, by the way, don't agree. And you know what? Although I'm very supportive of Indigenous issues, very aware of the struggles facing urban and in particular rural Aboriginal communities, and count several Indigenous people as friends, I am yet to be convinced that this is what we or they need. And the reason the advocates have not got me over the line is that they're asking Australians to go to a referendum, maybe as early as next year, to vote on it without having any detail. And there are plenty of people, white, black, brindle, arguing strongly that we don't need detail to vote on this concept. In fact, in this weekend's Australian, Mr Leibler, who co-chaired the expert panel and the Referendum Council on constitutional recognition of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander Australians, he wrote that a more detailed model would only lead to a devastating no vote. And he said those who argue otherwise only want to sabotage the process. Is he kidding? This bloke is so badly deluded, it is not funny. So if we want to know what it's all about, we deliberately don't want it. Really? How do we know if we want something if that something is not clear? We don't have the detail on it. He must be so far ensconced in that Indigenous bubble at the moment that he's lost all rational thought, because that argument, both of them, are not rational. I couldn't disagree more. I want to know, how will we use this advisory body and in which circumstances? That's not too much to ask. I want to know whether this body will have a greater say than the parliamentarians we elected democratically. That's not too much to ask. I want to know what kind of Indigenous people will be selected for such a role. And I want to know, being a sceptical person, why won't they give us detail before running a referendum? Is that because detail is what trips up referenda? Detail is certainly what skittled the 1999 referendum on a republic. But rightly so, it was so dysfunctional as a template, it wasn't funny. Australians rejected it. But given our suspicions and mistrust of government at the moment, and I don't think it's been more pronounced than it is now, how do you expect a population to make changes to the process of a constitution without the detail of how it would work? It's got no chance of passing. We'll just throw another $500 million at another referendum and it's up against the fence. Even if you look beyond the lack of detail, the concept seems quite odd and quite unique and potentially divisive. Divisive on the basis of race. Is that not what we're trying to get away from? Why should Indigenous Australia have an additional say in federal legislation than what they have through the Parliament anyway? We keep hearing that the Indigenous population aren't being heard. Sorry? Really? They are so well represented in the Parliament currently. Just have a look at the numbers. More than they have per capita as far as population is concerned. Do we need to say sorry? Is this part of the process of saying sorry again because of previous generations colonising the land, for establishing very modern systems of law and health and wealth, which has taken an ancient society to become one of the most excellent first world countries on the planet? We've already done the sorry. We've done the sorry in spades. In fact, right now, Indigenous Australians are overrepresented in the House. Let's not forget that. So who's not listening? Their own people are not listening? Our democratic system is working very well for First Nations people. But we'll be discussing this topic, you can bet on it, this radical change to our Constitution many, many times leading up to the Labor government's promise to run a referendum on a voice to Parliament. But surely we've got to know what we're voting for. And if the reason we can't have any detail is because detail may twist the result against the affirmative, well, sorry, that's not on. We deserve to be told the detail. And if Australians think they're being deprived of detail to twist a result, they will not vote for this. I certainly won't be.